welcome to the Cine-Files, where this week we are not jumping into a great film. We are not exploring its themes, its history, its filmmaking, and we will have no idea what influence it has on us today because we are just sitting here with good friend of the show, Scott Mantz, and we just thought we would talk a little bit about movies in general. Scott, welcome to a special episode of the Cine-Files.
Steve, John, this is just like a conversation we would be having whether we were on this podcast or not.
Truth.
Just to talk about movies. Favorite conversations for all three of us.
Yeah, and we're doing this because we're transitioning over to another server. So we wanted to put out some kind of content for you all, and we hope this conversation tides you guys over until next week for when we drop part 2 of the Civil War. So we asked Scotty to come by and have a conversation with us about movies and about being on the Cine-Files.
Cine-Files, I'm telling you, so the first time we did the Cine-Files, we talked about Wrath of Khan.
Was it Khan or was
Wrath
it?
of Khan.
Okay.
It was Wrath of Khan, and then we did Blade Runner.
Yes.
Okay, and then
the Opus.
Then we did Close Encounters.
Close Encounters.
Then we did 2001.
And then 2001.
Which was the Opus.
And then after 2001, I think it was you, Steve, you said, come up with a movie that is not science fiction.
Right.
And I thought, okay, let me think about this. And then it hit me because I know you are a Beatles fan, John.
Yes.
And I went, wait a minute. And this is actually a great movie, a movie that Roger Ebert dubbed as the Citizen Kane of jukebox musicals. It was The Beatles, A Hard Day's Night. And leave it to us on the Cine-Files to turn an 87-minute movie into a 3-hour conversation.
It was.
We do have skills in that area. Speaking of which, so Yesterday is coming out.
Yes.
Have either of you seen it yet?
I saw it twice.
I've seen it once, and I'm going to see it again Monday night.
Me too.
Yep.
Oh,
So,
great.
Am I going to like it?
You go, John.
I will say that you are, and we're not allowed to give a full review because of the embargo and stuff, but I will say you will like, if you're a Beatles fan, you will like it. If you like the Richard Curtis movies, you will like it. If you are a person who's looking to see a more straightforward type of romantic comedy, blah, 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 you might not like it as much. But for me, I found myself smiling through the whole movie, laughing through the whole movie, and there's a scene near the end of the movie that broke me in half.
Oh my gosh.
No, as a Beatles fan, broke me in half.
Okay, so John, I like the movie a lot. So the premise is that there's this glitch in the world,
Right, yeah.
and this aspiring musician played by Ramesh Patel.
Ramesh Patel.
He is somehow spared the effects of this worldwide glitch. And so he is recovering from an accident, a bike accident, and he is the only person on Earth who remembers the Beatles.
Right.
No one else remembers the Beatles. The Beatles did not exist. Takes place in today.
Yeah.
Right.
So the question is, how could today even look like it does today?
Well, that's the if I've been watching the trailer over and over again now.
Yeah.
Because the Beatles didn't just influence music. The Beatles influenced everything.
Fashion,
They influenced
pop culture,
fashion,
film.
culture. The Beatles gave a voice to a generation that did not have one.
Right.
And it just built from there. So, okay, once you get past that, which is a suspension of disbelief that's easy to do. So the premise of the film is, so he starts recording the music of the Beatles and passing it off as his, but he has a crisis of conscience. He feels really guilty about it.
Right.
But that concept, that premise is brilliant.
Yeah.
It's never been done. It is a completely original idea. It's not a sequel. It's not a reboot.
Right.
It's not a prequel. It's not based on a Star Wars movie or a superhero movie. So as long as the movie is focusing on that, I thought it was really great. Richard Curtis wrote the screenplay, and Richard Curtis wrote and directed the mother of all romantic comedies, Love Actually.
Love Actually. Right.
When the movie is being a romantic comedy, I felt like it's been done.
Okay.
I felt like you have this phenomenal premise. Why are you spending all this time on a romantic comedy when you have so much potential to look at this world without the Beatles? I like the film a lot. On a scale of 1 to 10, I give it an 8. But I felt like when it was the romantic comedy stuff, it's that part had been done, and I felt like it was a really, really, really good movie that could have been great.
If we could have a spoiler discussion, we'd have a bigger debate about
When's the
that.
embargo? When's the embargo?
After it drops, after like 2 days before it comes out.
Yeah, it comes out the 26th.
Oh yeah, no, we can't.
All right, so well, here's the other thing, Johnny.
Yeah.
The scene that you're talking about, not a spoil. I'm not spoiling it.
Yeah.
That scene. Wow.
You're either gonna love that scene or
you're gonna hate it.
that, which
Because I
some
loved
people
it.
hated it, and I loved
I
it.
could not believe
Yeah.
that people hated the
Yeah.
scene. You'll know exactly what it is, Steve, when you
when
see
you
it.
see it.
But it is a scene it really got to me.
Yep.
It affected me. It gave the movie a massive amount of profound depth that nobody saw this moment coming.
When it
no
happened,
one.
Yeah. When it's leading up to it, you're like, "What's going? Where's it?
Where's this going? When this scene
You
happens,
certainly
God.
piqued my curiosity.
Yeah.
your jaw, seriously, your jaw will hit the floor and you will gasp in disbelief. But I loved it. But I was talking to a friend of mine back east who hated that part.
Yeah.
She hated that
I
part.
can't. I can't believe that you're a Beatles fan and hate. Like usually, I'm open to everyone having their own interpretation, subjective nature. But with this, I will say that if you cannot be an authentic Beatles fan and dislike this scene.
I
in my
completely
opinion.
agree. And Steve, when you see this and you see this moment that we're talking
can't wait.
about, it is going to change the way you see the movie,
Yeah.
and it's going to give you a lot of. The more you love the Beatles, it will
Yep.
make you think a whole lot about the. Let's just say the effect that being a Beatle had on those four guys.
Yep.
There's something you said earlier, because I can't respond at all about this movie because, of course, I haven't seen it. But which is that it's so interesting when there's a movie that has kind of multiple tracks going on, and like it sounds like in Yesterday there is the Beatles, importance of the Beatles, singer-songwriter music track, and then there's the romantic comedy track. And it's interesting when you're watching a movie where it keeps going back to the track you care less about. And it's sort of like one of the one I was trying to, there was one that I can't think of at this moment. But one of the one I don't know if you've watched Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which
That's a great show.
which I like it.
Amazon
I
Prime.
like it a lot. But the track that I like is the stand-up. I want to be in the stand-up comedy world. I want to see Lenny Bruce, and I love that era, and see the behind the scenes and the TV, and how does she become a comedian? And I don't care that much about her relationships and her family as much as I love Tony Shalhoub, who is a genius. But like and it's so interesting. She's like, no, go back. You just left. But I want to be over there.
That is a great point. That is it, and the exact reaction that you have with Mrs. Maisel, which I love the show, and I completely agree. To be a woman, a stand-up comic in the '60s, that stuff is great. The family stuff, the dramedy stuff with the family and the
And they're all
separated
talented
husband.
people.
It's all good.
Yeah.
But that's the part that where I just I felt like it was something I hadn't seen before.
See, and I would argue that without those relationships, you don't have her jokes.
Totally.
You don't have her comedy. You don't have the foundation of where her comedy comes from. So although it may bother you to go back to that track is super necessary
I
for
totally
you to
agree. No.
enjoy the other thing. And I think the same thing with Yesterday. I think that romantic comedy aspect. And by the way, I think it's something that hasn't been done before because of their relationship. And so I think that's the uniqueness to that. And I think with Maisel, the same thing. Although it feels like it's been done before, I don't think it's. I don't think I've ever seen a show where it's done quite like that.
No, it's a very unique show.
Yeah.
Without spoiling anything about Yesterday, especially this particular scene, what it really came through in the end of Yesterday for me was just how special the Beatles are.
Yeah.
Not were, are. How much the Beatles mean to people.
Yeah.
And just how one way or another, now that you've seen the film and you haven't, one way or another, the music was meant to be.
Oh, there it is.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
One way or another.
Right. That's a great point.
The music, we were meant to have this music. And this premise is we get the music without the four guys, or do we? I mean, again, I'm not spoiling anything in the film, but I walked out of that movie going, like I started thinking about how people, how generations are introducing their kids to the Beatles. I can't tell you how many times over the years, because a lot of people, all my friends certainly know that I'm a Beatle maniac, and certainly all the professionals in the business, the publicists, my friends and colleagues, whatever, who say, oh yeah, I just showed my my kid Yellow Submarine, the movie Yellow Submarine. When they re-released Yellow Submarine in theaters a couple of years ago, I went and saw it at the Era Theater in Santa Monica. And all these people brought their kids.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just the greatest feeling. I mean, the Beatles are like Bach and Beethoven. Like 500 years from now, people are going to be listening to the Beatles, studying the Beatles. That's if climate change doesn't destroy the world.
Okay, I'm trying to think of how to broaden this out, because you're touching on a thing that I've been thinking about a lot, which is that there are certain cultural touchstones. And those that are sort of, they're the air we breathe. They're the world that we live in. And the Beatles, certainly for us growing up, is one of them. And there's certain things that fall away, and so like where Elvis hasn't really fallen away, although maybe he is starting to a little bit, but maybe, Fats Domino did, or maybe, Jerry Lee Lewis did, or, because over time, there was a time when you only absorbed the media. There was no media. It's like if a dude was playing a guitar in the room, that was the only media there was. And if there was no dude with a guitar, there was nothing, But then as soon as we could record things, then you could preserve things over time. And some of those things stuck. And some things are listened to and were the coolest thing in the world, and they fade away. And over time, it's harder and harder for something that was from the 30s or the 40s or the 50s to hang on. And what you're saying, which I tend to, is that the Beatles is going to hang on 500 years.
Forever.
Yep.
Yeah. And there are other things that become less and less important generationally. And right now it's like, well, we're right at the age where the people who grew up with the Beatles at the Beatles age are going to die.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And so the question is, and that's really the question, is like, people don't really listen to Bing Crosby anymore.
No.
People do listen to Frank Sinatra, but I would guess that Frank Sinatra is falling off. I know you would be upset.
No, I disagree, because he has a Sirius XM station. So people discover Sinatra all the time. And I
Not
think
like the Beatles.
No. I'm not comparing the Beatles or Sinatra. I think they're both uniquely different, because Sinatra's a standard vocal singer. Amongst that, no one touches him. No one. Amongst pops, in my opinion, pop bands, no one touches the Beatles. And so they each own their corner of the market. I think people will always have a desire for vocals and standards, because there's a way that Sinatra sang that music that no one else can sing it. And I think the same with the Beatles. There's a way the Beatles sang that music that people rarely match. I would say Marvin Gaye's version of Yesterday is maybe the greatest version I've ever heard.
Ray Charles?
No, Marvin Gaye.
Marvin Gaye's Yesterday.
He did Yesterday. And if you've never heard his version of Yesterday, it will snap you in half. It will snap you
never heard his version
in
of
half.
Yesterday.
It is he finds the sadness of the loss, and he's singing at the time.
But this is the thing. I'm not saying it's not great.
No, I know. I'm saying
will Jax's generation, my kid's generation, or the next generation find Marvin Gaye's Yesterday? I don't think they will.
Oh, no. I'm saying the Beatles music they'll find. I'm saying it's rare that people match the quality because of the way they sing it. There's something they bring to it that no one else can bring to it, and it endures in a way that reaches and this is why the Beatles still get passed on generation to generation. You talk about them bringing their kids, they're going to carry it forward. I think with Sinatra, that's lesser, and you make a good point, Steve. Less people bring their kids to see Sinatra, but old people are passing down Sinatra as much as possible through records or CDs to their kids, to the ones who want to know about Sinatra.
And speaking of, I'm glad you brought up the Sirius channel. Glad you brought up the Sirius channel, because I've been listening to that a lot.
Yeah.
The Sinatra one?
Sinatra, and I'm just like, wow, what a world the whole world is open for me, because I I just knew like the hits, shut up and play the hits. But there's that channel on Sirius, it's fantastic. But I see what you're saying, and I do agree that sure, there's always going to be moving forward a portion, a following, a fan base that will continue to carry the torch of Sinatra through. But like when you look at like the Beatles, like how popular they still are. I mean, it's been this year 2019 will be the 50th anniversary of Abbey Road, and so you're talking about the Beatles are starting to wrap up Okay, but I just remember just a few years ago, 5 years ago,
Yeah.
we were celebrating the 50th anniversary. We were just celebrating the 50th anniversary of when the Beatles came to America for the very first time. Just 5 years ago, those lovable mop tops played at Sullivan, and now it's just 5 years, and we're going to be celebrating the Beatles' second to the last album, the last album that they recorded as a band.
You know what I think changes it is that, so when I started listening to music, we were talking about in our last podcast, we're recording things on a cassette. So I recorded, my sister had the Beatles albums, and I took my little cassette player and I put the record player on the record, or the record on the record player, and I took my cassette and I put it next to the speaker to record the Beatles albums. It was very high tech. And I probably still have a couple of them in that cabinet right there. But what happened was I had the Beatles and I had Simon and Garfunkel and Bob Marley and Billy Joel and, a few other things, and the Monkees, and I listened to those cassettes over and over and over again because that is all I had. That was all the music. So those songs, the number of times I heard, Sgt. Pepper or Let It Be or Revolver is in the hundreds. People growing up today, they have all songs at all times. They will never, ever listen to songs as many times as I listened to those songs at that time.
Right, because it was more limited
that's
when you
all I
had
had.
those songs. Right, that was all you had. Right.
Yeah, but I think that's what speaks even more volumes to the enduring nature of the Beatles is they will stand out. Even with more quality.
I'm not trying to
more
make this a
choices.
discussion about the Beatles. I'm actually thinking about how much drops away. Like, I'm thinking about...
I get your point.
Yeah.
I get your point, but I'm saying the Beatles will never drop away because I think there's...
Maybe that's so.
Oh, I think it's... Mozart hasn't dropped away, and that was 2 centuries ago.
Sure.
So to me, I think the Beatles are like that. You compare them to
no,
Bach.
I agree.
I think they're untouchable. All music could die, and if you still have the Beatles, music would still matter.
The whole reason I subscribed to the Sirius channel was because of the Beatles channel.
Right.
On May 18th, 2017,
Right.
I remember when I saw that dropped, I guess I'm getting Sirius XM.
Right.
And channel 18 and the three big takeaways for me for Sirius XM are definitely the Beatles channel and the Sinatra channel, but I love the Grateful Dead channel.
There's a Grateful Dead channel.
The Grateful Dead channel.
There's a Jimmy Buffett channel.
Yeah. Elvis, Springsteen.
There's an Elvis channel,
Pearl
Springsteen
Jam,
channel. I think Springsteen will endure as well. I don't think
Tom
Springsteen
Petty.
will ever leave.
It's funny because I keep trying
Tom
to
Petty, right?
I keep trying to ask this question. I keep not doing it the right way because my question isn't about the Beatles. Actually, what my question is about is what are the things? Maybe I put it this way.
Sorry.
What are the things that are important to you that are dropping away? I think that's more the thing. You know what I mean? Like you said in our last podcast that the videotapes you owned were Rocky 3, Wildcats, Caddyshack, and there was one other.
Remember what Rocky 3, Caddyshack, Broadcast News.
Broadcast News.
Yeah.
It's like some of those movies are not going to be important. Do you know what I mean? Like they're not carried for, even though they might be special to you.
Right.
Like for me, like it's funny. So I love the Monkees. I thought the Monkees was the greatest TV show in the world. The first record out, real records I had were the Monkees, which I bought at a garage sale for 25 cents. And I played them over and over and over again. And when I recorded the cassette, they had scratches on the record. So the song, it went she, and then skipped part of a verse and then played it. And that's what I had on the cassette for years. So that's how I heard that song. Now, I tried to show my son an episode of the Monkees, and he looked at it as like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, this won't move forward. The Monkees, it's not that some people, there are a couple of good songs, but and I'm not saying that the Monkees is important art. Right. I'm saying, oh, that's a part of my childhood that will fade away. You know what I mean?
Point. Yeah. So what's something that you love that you feel is sort of slipping away?
I don't know if there's anything that I love that I feel that's slipping away in terms of media or art. This is a very interesting question you bring.
Great question.
It's actually put me in a lot, like, because you're always known for asking these interesting questions, Steve. Amongst our group of friends, Steve's always known for asking these interesting questions, and we go into these long philosophical discussions. But I think what I feel is slipping away is the idea of right and wrong. The concrete idea of right and wrong is what I feel is slipping away more than anything else.
That's deep.
I was talking about the Monkees.
Yeah, I know, and I respect that. I respect that. And I just feel like I can endure the loss of just about any.
Based on yours, I have another one. So go ahead.
Yeah, I can endure just about the loss of anything. But I think that's the big thing that I feel is starting to disappear, is this understanding and concrete belief of right and wrong as we become more consumed with this idea of fake news and biased reporting, and more people buy it as more uneducated people buy it, or more people who are more than willing to agree with that point of view without investigating it for fear of questioning their own construct. I find we're losing one of the basic core tenets of what made us so unique as a country. And we're devolving back into the rest of the countries from the past that were lost because they became this. We're losing our exclusivity in my.
That's heavy, and I see your point, and I do agree with it. Bring it back to like entertainment.
Yeah.
There's two things that I think are slipping away, and one of them I'm very, very close to.
She's so heavy, man.
She's so heavy.
She's so.
For me, as a lifelong Star Trek fan. Okay. And holding the original series above the rest, really being the gold standard. The interesting thing is, so now, you have Star Trek Discovery, which just wrapped its second season. You have this show in development, Star Trek Picard,
right?
Which picks up 25 years after, Picard left the bridge of the Enterprise. You have all these other shows in development and things in development, but people are forgetting the original series.
Yeah.
People are forgetting the original series.
I changed my answer, Scott.
I feel like
yours is a hell of an answer.
But I like this answer. This is more.
It's a real
We're
sort
dying.
What the original series, people don't care. They look at it and they just think it's dated and cheesy, but they don't realize that it's the best written show of them all, because
we don't have anything Star Trek without it.
No, you don't. You don't have Enterprise or Voyager or definitely not even Discovery. Nothing.
Or Next Generation.
Or the JJ movies.
Yeah.
But the back in the day, in 1966, no one knew what a Star Trek was. They didn't have a big budget. What they had were great stories and great acting.
Yeah.
But I feel like, especially because I go to these conventions every year in August in Las Vegas, and every year the TV quotient of the original series drops further and further off. People are the fans of the original series do not even matter to CBS now, because they're putting all their eggs in one basket with these newer shows. The other thing that I think is really slipping away, and I'm sure you guys will agree with this, classic movies. Failure of Filmstruck after just 2 years.
Yeah.
That was a travesty.
And this is what I mean by me carrying that cassette around, as opposed to here are all things all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, for us, when we grew up, and you and I are almost exactly the same age, that Star
I'm only
Trek,
a year behind you guys, a year or two. Yeah.
that Star Trek that came on at 5:00 in the afternoon for me on Channel 2, that was it.
Yep.
Like that, nothing was competing for my sci-fi dollar.
Right.
It wasn't like there was tons of Marvel movies and
You didn't have 800 channels.
I didn't have it. It's like, this was all of it. And so I watched those episodes over and over and over again. And that I can't, again, I was thinking, like, how am I going to introduce my son to Star Trek, original Star Trek? And I was like, I'm going to show him The Trouble with Tribbles. That's why I finally came up.
That's for his age.
He got
Absolutely.
5 minutes in, and he's like, this is so boring. And I'm like, and the reality is that if you were to show him all the other things that he sees with amazing special effects and fast moving compared to a Marvel movie, he's not going to watch it. Well, and this is the thing about it too, is that in a weird way, it's the, a part of me is ceasing to be relevant, I think, as you grow older.
Wow.
Because this,
Who got heavy now?
well, it's funny. So here's this is what I was just thinking of sitting here. So my dad was a stamp collector. He was a philatelist.
Wow.
He started collecting
Stamps.
He started collecting stamps at 11 years old, and I think he had philately stamp collecting merit badge when he was a Boy Scout, and he collected them his whole life. And at night, after we did whatever, he went back upstairs, and he would sit at a TV table like this, and would go through stamp collections, and he would put on the little stickers, and he would put them in his album, and he would put the album in the thing. And he had which he did for 60 years. or almost 60 years. And his collection, we had a whole closet at my mom's house, which was like, if you look over there where my comic book collection is, he had that shelf and a whole other shelf that was solidly stamps.
Wow.
He had, I think, every American stamp from about 1860.
Holy Toledo.
And it wasn't that he never bought like the really like this is a $20,000 stamp, but he had this huge collection to the point where he would go and buy other collections and incorporate them into his collection and then sell what he didn't want back. And he did this for years and years and years.
My goodness.
And when he died, he gave instructions of what to do with the stamp collection because he knew none of us wanted it. And he said, you're going to go to this dealer and he's going to sell it. And he gave us an estimate, which was a lot of money of this is what this stamp collection is worth.
Yeah.
It was worth a tenth of that.
Yep.
And the reason it was worth a tenth of that, and maybe 20%. 20%. And the reason was because there are no stamp collectors anymore.
Right.
Wow.
Because they're all dying out. Because people don't collect stamps. When he was in 1950, and he was that was a thing that kids did, was you collected stamps or coins or things like that. People don't have hobbies like that anymore. Very few. Because we have video games and we have other things, you know? And so this whole thing that my dad literally devoted his life to was actually not worth anything.
It was like obsolete.
It was obsolete.
That's yeah, but that's happening. And by the way, just the point you were making about, you know, my Star Trek was on at 7:00
Right.
every night in the mid 70s, and then they put it on at 11:30 at night.
Yeah,
it was on at 11:30.
Mine was on Saturday in the morning on Channel 20. Saturday at 10 a.m. in the morning, they would show them right after wrestling. Right after professional wrestling, then Star Trek would come.
Wow, that's crazy.
And so it's why I became an addict to both of those things growing up. I would agree. I think, too, the Star Trek thing is dying. I think classic movies, as you hear people, like I listen to these young people talking to me about how Young Guns 2 and the X-Men films and these kinds of things. And I asked them about classic movies, and a lot of them haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Yet they think they can tell you what's a good movie and what isn't a good movie. To me, if you haven't studied the classics, you don't have a fucking thing to say to me about what's good and what isn't good in a theater. You don't.
Well,
I
they
don't
can say
care
what they
people
like.
say. I said I didn't say they can't say it.
Right.
I said they don't got a fucking thing to say to me because I won't listen to your opinion if you're showing me this bargain rate garbage. People try to tell me Tombstone is one of the greatest westerns ever made, and I'm like,
Tombstone.
Isn't that your partner Matt Nost?
yeah, no, he doesn't say it's like one of the greatest westerns, but it's just
I believe he picked it over like Citizen Kane or something in one of your top 10 shows.
he probably did.
Not over. It was over Schindler's List, I think.
Right.
Tombstone.
But it's that kind of thing. And it's like, well, then I don't trust I just don't trust. If you don't have a basis, if you haven't watched classic movies and studied classic movies, then you don't understand the medium. You don't. I'm sorry, you don't. And you don't understand why it endured and why people love movies as much as they do. You can love movies, but if you don't investigate the genesis of the medium, to me, I don't know what you've got to say. Like me, I would never school somebody on music. Never. Because I didn't study music the way I studied films. And I would never say to somebody, oh, this is a bad song because of this, this, and this.
Right.
You know, the technique and the breakdown of the song. Would never say that because I would say it's not bad. I don't like the song for me. But with films, I think you have to have that. And I think we're losing that with film criticism. As we become more and more obsessed with, like, and I do the medium of YouTube. This is where I make my bones. But I have done the legwork of watching classic films, studying classic films, reading Pauline Kael reviews, back Roger Ebert reviews, Leonard Maltin reviews. I mean, I've done that so that I can speak about it knowledgeably. But I see people walk into the sphere who have no basis of this, and that scares me because that's starting to become the norm, and people aren't watching classic movies anymore.
Or not watching it. I just feel like
or even foreign films. That's what Criterion is. That's why I push Criterion so much. People don't rediscover those.
Yeah, but I do feel like, you know, the people who watch like Turner Classic Movies, like you're not going to get young people. You're not going to get Gen Yers or Gen Zers or millennials.
But why did we as young people watch it? Was it because it wasn't enough? There wasn't a lot of choice.
There wasn't a lot of competition.
Well, and I think because
a shame.
Well, and also because more and more the young generation has become the profit drivers of the whole.
Yes.
You know, and so it's like, and so they are being served to like. And it, you know, it's this weird, you know, what I always forget the name of it, but the snake eating its own tail.
Yeah.
Is that they go, oh, we're going to give you what you want in order for you to tune into us. And so we continue to think, oh, this is what you seem to like. We'll give you more of that. Yeah. And that's a non-challenging way of doing things. We had 3 channels.
Yes.
So once we were done watching those things, well, I watched the Bowery Boys and I watched Abbott and Costello and I watched, because that's what there was. And then that got me interested in the other stuff. I mean, I think the thing, and I mean, both of you make your money as film critics. It's not how I make my money, but like, to me, like I'm not very interested in hearing 17 people's takes on the latest Marvel movie. Mm-hmm. It doesn't interest me at all. Is that in terms of criticism, I'm interested in the Peter Bogdanovich, Francois Truffaut, like the thought. Someone who can teach me something, I am interested. Yeah. I like to learn stuff. I'm not interested in just that dude's opinion about a thing.
That's where it's going. I mean, this summer alone is a big red flag that the film business is in going through a massive transition. First of all, you have Disney buying Fox, and then you have let's look at the summer. With the exception of Avengers Endgame, John Wick 3, and Aladdin, the summer has been a disaster. Yep. Because on one hand, Godzilla, Dark Phoenix, Ben in Black International, Shaft are all not doing well.
I didn't even realize Shaft had come out.
Yeah, it came out this past weekend and it made $7 million. Nor should those movies do well because they're bad. But, you know what? Long Shot with Charlize Theron was a great movie. Booksmart, which is like a super bad with 2 girls instead of two guys, is a terrific movie. And then this past weekend, Late Night with Emma Thompson and Mindy Kaling, terrific film. Those movies did not do well. And everyone...
Why is that? Why do you think they don't do well?
Well, they don't have big enough stars, and even though Charlize Theron she's a star, but she's not. If she was wearing a superhero outfit, it'd be different. But I do think that the streaming services are starting to affect the box office.
That's a great point.
Like, for example, Late Night, a Long Shot, Charlize Theron movie, opened the weekend after Avengers. Now, you could look at that, be Lionsgate thinking, okay, well, it's the weekend after Avengers, and it's counter-programming. It's a romantic comedy, not a superhero movie. But I know a lot of people, especially people back east, but where I grew up in Philly, who did not go to the movies to see Long Shot because they didn't want to deal with the crowds of people and the parking for the people who were still going to see Avengers. They stayed away. And what are they doing? Like, I mean, even if I just had Netflix and nothing else, I still wouldn't be able to keep up with everything that they drop. Like,
much of which is good.
Well, Black Mirror is phenomenal.
Amazing.
Black Mirror is phenomenal. When They See Us is terrific.
I haven't seen that yet.
But they have all these other shows, Dead to Me and Always Be My Maybe, and I can't even keep up with Netflix.
Well, and this is the thing, is that I think that it's like a 2-part thing that happened. The second part is that the streaming services have put out so much great content, like amazing things in all sorts of genres, science fiction and drama and all this stuff. I think, but you have to go 10 or 15 years earlier, is that Hollywood movies abdicated adults. They said, we're not in the drama business. We're going to stop making romantic comedies. We're not making any of this other stuff. Is that we're going to put, and we'll make a couple of them. But, it used to be that they would do a wide slate of films, and that their A pictures were the dramas, were Lawrence of Arabia and Bridge on the River Kwai and Amadeus and these kinds of movies. That's where those are really important to us. And the less important ones are the science fiction and the action, all of which I love. And now what they've said is our whole business is based on creating a universe and we don't care about anything else. And so for 15 years, they have trained grown-ups that the movie theater is not for you. And then the streaming service come along and say, hey, we care about you. We're going to have intelligent, complicated, challenging, well-made stuff. And so they're like, I'm going to stay home. I got episodes of, I can't tell you how much TV Karen and I have not watched.
I know. Well, it's overwhelming. And I feel like, but for most people who have these streaming services, and I say Netflix because they're way out in front as the disruptor, is you've got all this quality content and it's like 8 episodes or 10 episodes that all drop at once, or you can go spend $50 to go see a shitty movie.
Yeah.
Well, there's no contest. I'll stay home and just watch quality content at home because I don't have to deal with the crowds, and I don't have to deal with the expense and the stale popcorn and the parking and the people on their freaking phones texting while the movie is going on. It's I think by the end, if things don't turn around, and there's still a chance for things to turn around, Spider-Man Far From Home is opening July 2nd. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Quentin Tarantino's 9th movie, is July 26th. You got Calvin and Hobbes, the Fast and Furious movie. It's right. Hobbs and Shaw. Hobbs and Shaw. I call it Calvin and Hobbes.
I got so excited for a second. I was like, there's a Calvin and Hobbes movie?
Yeah.
I'm in.
Is there a Far Side movie? Then I'm in.
Fast and Furious presents Calvin and Hobbes.
Yeah.
But no, there is if the end of the summer rolls around and things don't turn around, then a lot of the pundits, a lot of film experts and critics and stuff they're all gonna be writing about how the box office is in trouble.
Well, this is what I think is also happening. Is a little bit of more nuance. Is these superhero films are what they are. Stuff like what Marvel does, though. Marvel incorporates actual emotional journeys for their characters to go on.
Absolutely.
It isn't just wearing the costume. So there is enough there to keep people like me who love films that explore deeper themes there, because it's almost an afterthought that they're superheroes, right? It's still part of the movie, but it's not like the only reason to go. There's great actors like Robert Downey Jr., Mark Ruffalo, fantastic independent movie actor, in playing these roles and bringing these characters to life. So there's enough to keep you there. But that being said, I think you make a great point, Steve. 15 years ago, I think Gone Girl was the last year where dramas could bring people out to the theater and it would be water cooler discussion.
2014.
So now you don't have that anymore. Now these films, people aren't desperate to run out and see it because they're not talking about it at their office or at their school or whatever. It's the Marvel movies. It's all the other bigger things that people are talking about. So they go, you know what? I'll wait till it comes out streaming. I'll wait till it comes out because I can watch it at home and enjoy it and blah, blah, blah. And that point brings in your point, Scott. I don't have to go to the theater, endure all that craziness. There's a reason why Movie Pass came up. There's a reason why AMC Stubs is around now, because they're trying to encourage people to go to the movies, because I think the viewership, the number of people going to the movies is going down. The tickets go up, but the number of butts and seats is going down.
Yeah, the attendance is down.
The attendance is down because people are like, well, I can watch it at home in 3 months. All that's not the big movies. And it used to be that the dramas and the big comedies, those were the things you had to go see. Now it's the event films you have to go see. And you're right. The industry is changing. I don't think we're going back. I think it's changed permanently. And I think because these streaming services have come in to provide a home for these other films that we would have normally gone to the theater to see and talk with our friends, we can now watch it at home and text with our friends as we're watching.
Oh, it's just unbearable to think that you're at home supposed to be watching something and you're sitting there on your phone, you're checking your email, you're texting.
People do that.
It's just watch the damn movie.
And there is a lot, because I just started Yellowstone this week on the Paramount Network app. That show is incredible. It's the best show I've seen in a long time.
I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. I haven't watched Chernobyl. I hear everyone says it's
phenomenal.
Says it's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things where it's like, we do the Cine-Files.
Yeah.
I have a kid. I have a job. Like, I don't know how people watch all this stuff.
How do people listen, again, like if you just want to watch Netflix, you can't keep up with everything that they're dropping. But then you have Paramount, you have HBO Go and Showtime and
Hulu,
and
Amazon
FX,
Prime.
And you have Hulu, Amazon Prime,
right?
And then by the end of the year, you're going to have Apple Plus and Disney Plus.
Yeah.
And Disney Plus is going to, like right now, Netflix is like the shit.
Yeah.
That's going to
Disney
change. Disney Plus is going to change. They're going to change the playing field in a very, very, very big way when they drop.
But this is another thing that's going to happen, is that we're going to run out of money because it was like I cut the cord.
So did I.
4 years ago, and I did because I'm a nerd, and I did a spreadsheet to see, well, how much money are we spending on DirecTV at this moment, and what would it cost if we got rid of DirecTV and did everything through Netflix and Hulu and iTunes and stuff like that, and it figured out that we would save, I think it was $1,700 a year.
Yep.
It was a huge amount of money. And be able to see everything. Sports would be the only problem, but I don't really watch a lot of sports. So it
That's
wasn't.
the reason I still have cable.
Yeah. So, but now, well, now you also need to subscribe to CBS All Access. And now you're also going to have to subscribe to Apple and to Disney and to WB and to Paramount.
You know what? You're going to...
And it's like, no, it's going to be so much money.
You're going to be paying what you were paying for cable.
And it's going to be where we're to, the whole point was like, to make it less convenient or more convenient, it is now going to once again be less convenient. And at a certain point, there's a breaking point because, and I understand that, you know, what happened when Apple and iTunes launched in terms of music and how unhappy the record companies have been because they gave essentially you can have everything. And that Disney and all these companies are going, oh, we don't want to make that mistake again. We want to control our own content and make our own money, but it's just making our lives really complicated.
Yeah,
And you could look at DC Universe, which is just about to get folded into the Warner Brothers stream, as a perfect example of that. A lot of people did not sign up. The numbers that they were hoping for did not sign up for DC Universe. $10 a month or whatever it was. And they killed Swamp Thing after one episode, which pretty much puts Titans and Doom Patrol now on Death Watch. And what the rumor is they're just going to fold it into the Warner Brothers streaming service and just make it all one price, because that's starting to happen. People are now starting to become selective about what apps or what streaming services they become a part of, because what you said, Steve, the money is now becoming evident to them that it's becoming even more expensive than cable. And now there's these rumors going around that some streaming providers are going to bundle their things all together for one price. So we're back at cable land all over again, just in a different way.
The king is dead. Long live the king.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny. I wrote a blog back when I wrote a blog years and years ago about killing the networks, and it was long before all these services. We didn't have all these streaming services and all that stuff then. And what I said then, which I still believe, but none of society seems to believe, is that we actually don't want a network. I want shows that I like. We have loyalty. It's like, I don't care about HBO. I want to watch Game of Thrones and Last Week Tonight, and these are the things I want to watch. Just let me. And I always was bothered, like, you know, because I come from the creative side of like, why are all these middlemen between the person who's making the thing and the person who wants to buy the thing? I just want to buy the thing from the person who's making the thing and have them make all the money. And I understand that why distribution has to happen, even though technologically there is no reason for it. We don't have distribution for the podcast. We are directly creating our thing and selling it to people. True. Or not selling it to people, but they could support us on Patreon. but you know, it's like the idea that there are these gatekeepers who control our access to the thing. Like, somebody wants to sell me their show and I can't get it unless I pay Disney a lot of money for all of the other crap that they have that I don't want.
Right.
You know?
But that's what Apple TV is for. You can buy just Game of Thrones and watch. But you're paying a lot of money, which in the end, you might as well have just ordered HBO.
Just get HBO Go.
Anyway,
that's exactly it.
But you know, I with all of the content that's out there, first of all, I mean, I'm just trying to keep up with all the movies that I have to see.
Me too, man.
And I still, you know, don't get to see everything. And
I don't keep up. I mean, you guys have to.
I mean, look, I mean, I love doing it. I'm definitely not complaining about that. But as a result, so I have Netflix, I have Amazon, I have Hulu, and so the rare night that I do, you know, just crash at home and I put on the TV and I open up the Netflix queue and I start scrolling down, then scrolling across, then scrolling down, scrolling across, looking for something that's going to like jump out at me. And in the end, I say, fuck it, and I watch Star Trek.
Me too. I do it all the time. You know? I just watched Devil in the Dark.
Devil in the Dark. Great episode from the first season, written by Gene Kuhn. It is one of the very finest episodes of Star Trek. Hey,
by the way, there's an interesting bit of Netflix that I've read about, which is that they try to have what they have on is called aspirational shows, which is shows that someone subscribes to Netflix because they know they're supposed to see, but nobody ever watches them. And so they have these heavy, serious documentaries, but you late at night don't go, I'm going to watch 12 Years a Slave or whatever it is. Whatever you go, I'm going to watch Star Trek. And what they find is that what people put on their queue compared to what they actually watch are totally different.
yeah.
Their list.
They on their list, they go, oh, I'm going to watch this documentary and this heavy drama and this important thing and this thing. Friends, let's watch some more Friends.
Exactly.
And I love that whole, like, we're going to pull you in with this, but we know you're actually going to watch that.
It's the hunter-gatherer thing. I want to have all this just in case the world ends. I'm going to watch all this. But since the world's not ending anytime soon, I'm going to watch Friends.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Because who doesn't like Friends?
Exactly.
I mean, but it's true, and I mean, you know, I'm ashamed to admit I never saw Game of Thrones, not one episode,
Oh my God.
not one episode.
Wow.
I know I missed
They
out,
make
didn't
you? I didn't know they made you.
Yeah, I'm the one. I'm the 1% who has never seen an episode of Game of Thrones. But I, you know, it was like the same time that everybody was on social media talking about Game of Thrones, everyone was on social media talking about Avengers Endgame.
Right.
Yeah,
So I saw that, so I didn't completely miss out.
Yeah, there you go.
So, this is a conversation that had no plan. It went an entirely different direction than I expected, and it was great.
Great conversation.
Agreed.
I really enjoyed it. Scott, again, thank you so much for coming on the show.
And Steve, I am so happy that you watched Devil in the Dark. That is just one of the very, very best Star Trek episodes.
It is a
And
fantastic
Here's
episode.
some food for thought for you. Devil in the Dark was from the first season, written by Gene Kuhn. There's an episode in the second season of Star Trek called Metamorphosis.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Another good episode.
That episode is also written by Gene Kuhn. If you take Devil in the Dark, take just sort of a very loose premise of it,
Right.
turn it into a love story in its metamorphosis.
So,
Here's why. So they don't, you know, Kirk and Spock, they don't know what this thing is that's killing all the miners on Jaina 6. So they got to kill it. But then they realize that the Horta is a mother protecting its eggs. So it flips the episode over and they become sympathetic and empathize and try to save the Horta. Second season, they don't know what the companion is, but they got to kill the companion so they can get Commissioner Heffer back to the Enterprise so that she can stop the war on Gamma Canera 6. So, but when they realize the companion is a female,
And in
it
love.
changes,
Yeah.
and in love with the man, it changes the course of the episode. And the way Shatner is trying, you know, his performance as Kirk in that episode, the way he tries to reason with the companion, saying, well, if you don't let us go, we will cease to exist. I think that is like Shatner's finest performance as Kirk in the original series. So I don't know why I just sort of went off on that,
Well-
but I did, and I'm always bringing it back to Star Trek.
well, so
Steve, and
just
Steve
because
John.
we were wrapping up, but just because you said that, I want to say one more thing, which is I think that way back when we did Wrath of Khan, I said that deep down, I think comic books and Star Trek are the most influential things on me as a writer and as a person. And what you're describing in Devil in the Dark and The Companion and in Balance of Terror and a whole bunch of other Star Treks, the essential Star Trek philosophy is that those things that we think are evil are actually things we don't understand.
And that is what Star Trek is all
That
about.
is so core to my way of looking at the world, to the point where I got labeled years ago by my friends as a contrary fuck, because they said at one point they said we were giving out mutant powers. It was just a joke when we were in college of like we had a friend, if he started singing, someone would automatically turn the radio up, and they're like, oh, that's your mutant power. If you sing, people will turn radios on. We had another friend, if you're playing a video game and you were doing really well, he said, hey, you're doing really well, you would immediately die. His mutant power was that he had the kiss of death.
It's cooler.
And that they said, and later on they said to me, oh, you're a contrary fuck. If anyone brings up one point of view, you will automatically bring up the opposite point of view. And that was very hurtful to me at the time. And I thought it was very true. And I had to go through a lot of personal growth to think about, like, wait, why am I doing this thing? It took me years to turn off that instinct. But at the heart of part of that instinct is that Star Trek thing, is that I'm constantly thinking about, well, what is that other person thinking? Why is the other person doing that?
That's why Star Trek Discovery doesn't really work as Star Trek, because they've
jettisoned that a bit.
As the Star Trek shows have gone on and on, they've talk about bringing it back to the whole, conversation here about what are we losing? People, the newer producers of Star Trek are losing sight on what made Star Trek to begin with, and Star Trek Discovery is a very good science fiction show, but it doesn't really it doesn't speak to me like the the original series and the Next Generation did.
I'll
The
agree.
two shows that Gene Roddenberry actually produced.
As much as I enjoy the second season of Star Trek Discovery, I'll agree with that. I think it doesn't affect me the way that original series does, or even the best of TNG, which I'm not the biggest fan of TNG, but the best of TNG affected me more than anything Discovery's done so far.
Well, and just to bring all of this together, we've talked about the Beatles, who cared about bringing ideas through music. We talked about criticism that is light and doesn't deal with classic films and understand the core of things, and that we're all interested in the ideas. We talked about Star Trek and its ideas. We talked about what Hollywood is putting out films that are light and don't have the content and the depth of things that maybe are on the streaming services that we care about. And we're here on the Cine-Files, where the whole purpose of our show is to dig in deep to the movies that we love. So I think this actually was a perfect episode of the Cine-Files. And Scott, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Steve. Thank you, Johnny.
If people wanted to reach you, how would they do it?
Just follow me on Twitter at MovieMance, or go to my website, moviemance.com.
Yeah, you can follow me at The Rogue Says on Twitter and on Instagram, and all the shows I'm doing, like the Top 10 and Geek Buddies, the Geek Buddies, which is a new one. Please go find that one. And we're going to dig in deep with Scott Mantz in a couple of weeks. We're digging deep to this very, complex, layered film called Airplane, the movie. I can't wait till we do that.
Yeah, and
Surely
I think
you can't be serious.
I am serious, and
Don't
that
call me Shirley.
And that is the end of the Cine-Files.